Hey, Chad Tomaszewski here with TSI Today. We brought our first 3 guests back together to do a round table to really dive into the technologies that they've used to advance their careers today. I often think of a quote, and the quote goes something along the lines of, the meeting of strangers is funny. It's odd how it often ends. After less than an hour together, it's really not hard to be friends. We're going to take 3 people from 3 different parts of the industry, bring them together, and see if we can't figure out a way to get along. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. I'm Chad Tomaszewski with TSI Today. Here with some great panelists. Let's get into it. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today, again, around our fitting rum barrel.
No rum, though.
No rum, unfortunately. So we've got 3 folks here that I've had the privilege of knowing for a long time. You gentlemen have crossed paths here and there. And of course, we've got a little bit of a wild card, Dan, who's new to this circle. And you know, I think that we have a lot of technologies that are in common. That's what we're here to talk about today. Some of those technologies and how they've made our worlds better and perhaps indifferent, but at the same time, how we're utilizing that technology to be more inclusive and meet a lot of challenges that the world is bringing today. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, you know, what technologies would your business have, Dan, that could potentially be anything that would ever be used in Indy's business? You know, Indy coming from the world of autonomous haul and wireless and all the stuff that goes alongside that. And for yourself, Dan, you know, it's really about agriculture. So where do you think the technologies might marry at some point?
Well, I think almost all technology has a place somewhere, provided that, I mean, there's a trend in tech, which I hate, which is really fancy $50 solutions to 5-cent problems. And if you're marrying the right technology and it actually solves a purpose, like there's a lot of neat flows back and forth and S-curves that can meet and match and kind of accentuate and add value to each business proposition. I think you're developing it, but I mean, on our side, one of the things that I think every technological background is going to use is the power over Ethernet, which I see as a smart cities play more than an agriculture play, but the data side of that acquisition, but the power management. Because we had to be really good at power managing, and so we did a lot of secret stuff to make sure that we could get our power consumption down to the point where we could actually take an office building, which is power poor, and turn it into a vertical farm. So that kind of technology on that side would probably be applicable to almost everything, I would imagine. So,
Bob, in your world, we're seeing PoE driven everywhere. We look back 10 years ago, it was kind of bleeding edge at the time, but today, I mean, everything from access control, CCTV is all running on that. A lot of your switchgear is all running on PoE as well right now. You see that as a big evolution within inside the tech space as well?
I would say that we are almost there. PoE is, I won't say that it's a future, it's more of a need that we'll have to work on that. And at the same time, when we say that PoE is in a lot of like the bigger infrastructure is the building infrastructure, where you have the older infrastructure and you recycling it to the newer spaces, you'll have to think about something off the beat that still works on the PoE, but it is more going to be like the Ethernet over coax or something, right? Yeah. Because it's a big part in the security world that coax is used for lot longer than we can think of. So Ethernet is definitely good, but the broadband technology that we did not take advantage of, we may call it hybrid, but that's a part as well.
Excellent. So Indy, I have this vision, right? Today I see great big trucks taller than this building that are driving without a body inside of it, somehow making it from A to B. And now I see your technology not only helping Bav and his business, but going to Dan's business with this robot, hopefully as handsome as myself, picking strawberries or green peppers off. How far in the future do you think that is? Do you think that's a possibility?
You know, I think what we've primarily seen is, you know, there has to be a really big business case and a cost focus. So if you're trying to enable digital transformation in farming and agriculture. And actually, there's been a lot of autonomous technology used for the last 20 plus years in farming in itself. So I think around sort of the value proposition and where we're seeing opportunity is now, we've gotten good at running automated technologies that's doing repeated sort of running in farms, whether it's irrigation or some other use cases, but now it's how do we actually gather more data in terms of how the actual farms are performing. For example, how much fertilizer do you need? Can we actually sense how much has been deployed over some time? And can we start gathering and compiling that data so we can then notice trends to have more data-driven decision making versus sort of the traditional way of farming where you kind of just know how much you need over a specific area. If you now start getting it with specific sensing equipment, then also historizing all of that information in software, you might be able to make better decisions, more optimal use cases of all of the materials that you need for farm to actually drive further optimization and better productivity.
I mean, that's a good point too, because you're asking about how they feed into each other. The precision ag that you're talking about, like, it has been around for a while, but one of the problems that agriculture has is the distance that it has to travel.
Yep.
And it's the same thing that you're doing in the oil and gas area, where you can't have loss of connectivity, like managing and monitoring that network to make sure that there's no gaps, so that you can aggregate securely and safely and properly all the data that you're collecting from all those disparate different systems in precision ag, bringing that together. I think that's where what you guys are doing would probably so beneficial to the agriculture space.
Yeah, and in New Zealand, we've actually we've done some research and development and developed some wireless mesh technology that we've been comparing some performance against traditional technologies like LoRaWAN to extend connectivity, and we've been able to get better performance. New Zealand has many deep valleys and areas where you're trying to get performance around farms, whether it's for agriculture use or if you're tracking pests and trapping, for example. And as a result of that, through that process, we've actually done some hardware development in New Zealand to help trying to solve that problem.
Which is awesome because not a lot of people are building things anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
I'll add a special difference that we have the other industry, I would say the manufacturing industry versus the farming. What I've seen personally is farms are more open to explore, where you don't have a lot of machine to human interaction and the frequency congestion when you talk about wireless, right? Mm-hmm. So that's easier to manage in that area. The value extraction is a niche area in there. Whereas on the other side, if you go, there's a lot of value we already know that where to get it and how to extract it easily. That helps the business. But at the same time, you see machine-to-machine interaction, safety is a bigger aspect because you have a lot of humans around, you have a lot of machine-to-machine interactions. At the same time, you have facilities that needs to be protected from this autonomous.
So based on that, Bhav, what we're really talking about here, guys, is data, right? We love it. Mm-hmm. The more data you give us, we're hungry for it, we're starved for it. The more we can get, the better. How do we get to a point where we can take industries from multiple different verticals and collaborate better? Because I think that, I like what you said. If we look at the agribusiness today, they're more hip to be able to embrace it a little quicker. They're okay with bleeding edge or cutting edge solutions out there. How do we collaborate more for a better, more inclusive technology upbringing inside of all industrial spaces?
I think last time we spoke about this, what's very close to my heart is fancy technologies are fancy. Data, lots of data. We have lots of sensors deployed already and lots of data is coming to us already. The next step would be to standardize it. The way we have the other ISAs, ISA and all the other regulatory bodies or the standard organizations, someone should jump in and start adding at this point of time that how the data should be collected, how the data should be analyzed. Because the speed we are getting the data, we will be hitting a wall of data rationalization, I would say, because it's so much of data. It's more work to the human. We are trying to help human race. At the same time, we are overloading them with a lot of data.
I think really, to your point, Bhav, like the opportunity is when you have so much information and there's that information overload, there's the opportunity to look at solutions in the machine learning space to try and parse some of that information and complexity and correlations where it can be difficult to do, if you're a person looking at very complex models with millions of data points on a day-to-day basis. So how can we parse that information and understand those correlations so that we can use tools that can do some automated analysis to help find some of those correlations so that you can have actionable work that you can do from that?
That's the point. So one of the big things that we and our team is all about is that for the last decade and a half, people have been taking data, and everybody, and I'm sure you guys get this all the time, everybody and their dog seems to pretend that they're a data scientist and they all know what they're talking about when it comes to how they ingest the data, how they use the data, but what they actually do is they make a dashboard and they go, here, Mr. User, here is a dashboard of stuff, but all you're doing is loading the human brain, and now you're back to machine to human.
Yeah.
You're just loading their brain with a bunch of stuff and you're not telling them what to do. There's no action side of that equation. And the action is the thing that, because that's hard.
Yeah.
Making a recommendation engine is hard, but making a dashboard's easy, but it looks like you're doing stuff.
That's right.
So, and that's a problem that I see in the world is looking like something and being something from far away. They look like the same thing, but actually doing and being something is way more complicated. And so what we really need in terms of tech is to take that data that we love so much and put it to actionable work.
Yeah.
And so, when it comes to like the ingestion of data that we're going to be doing at Agriplay, we're taking that data in and then we're actually putting it right into work orders for the team so that you can remove the scale challenge of having horticultural experts at every level. That just kills you. You need to be accessible to everybody. So when we're pulling data, it just says, go and pick these 5 strawberries.
Yep.
Instead of, hey, look at this dashboard. I think you might want to do something with these towers, right? It says do this, do that, escalation exception policies to make sure that you're actually doing the work that needs to get done rather than just forcing the human to try and make sense of what ultimately a recommendation, an AI or a background system should be doing. Like that's the functional side that I think is missed a lot, which is great that you brought it up, too. So,
No, absolutely.
How much are we not grasping today, do you think? If we go back 5-6 years ago, the big buzzword was the cloud. We're going to send everything to the cloud. To this day, I think there's a lot of people that have no idea what the cloud really is, right? Where's the cloud? What exists in the cloud? How does the cloud operate?
Yeah.
But now we're
A few of my favorite South Park episodes involve
Yes.
the cloud. Yeah.
So now we've gone even further. We talk about the digital transformation. We talk about immense amounts of data, storing them in things called data lakes. And everybody likes using these big words. How many people do you think are missing that gap and really don't understand the benefit of this? Do you think that at the highest levels inside of organizations they're grasping the benefit of that data lake, that transformation that's so required to get us to the next level with inside this business?
If I might interject, I think there's really the idea of when we talk about data lakes and gathering all of that information, it's to us, we've always like to differentiate what's business intelligence from what's operational intelligence. And what I mean to say by that is that with business intelligence, you can start looking at that data trending over time and look at sort of longer term changes you can make around your business plan and profile, where if you want to make incremental changes, for example, on shift or within the next hour, it's more operational intelligence where you need more real-time data and then actionable recommendations in real time or within that shift. And it's trying to figure out what are you trying to use the data for and where does it fit around those dimensions?
That's a great answer. I mean, and I think what that leads up to is a proper gaps and needs analysis, right? Is understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve. So when you guys are...
Well, but I mean, sometimes it's not about what... So I should preface this first by saying that I am not a data guy. I am data stupid in a lot of ways. That's why I have data scientists with 30 years on my team to tell me when I'm screwing up and when I'm right. So everything that comes out of my mouth might be incorrect, but the paradigm that I like to use is you don't know, like when it comes to AI or machine learning models, you don't know, I think, what you're actually looking for. What you're looking for is like a decision tree or something like that, some sort of a categorization model to figure out what you're looking for and what that value is, because I think if you come into it going, this is the benefit, Like sometimes there's obvious examples, and that's why we tend to focus on laggard industries, agriculture being one of them. Like they don't get much more. Anywhere that the industry goes, this is how it's always been done, there's a huge like value proposition to be made by cleaning things up. But outside of that, if you're really looking, especially in manufacturing, where they're talking about tenths of a percent, I think that the data lake and the methodology to going after that data is not so much to say this is where I think the opportunity is to say where is the opportunity, and to have the model that drives that action of here, and here are the things that you should focus on to grow and to develop, I think.
No, exactly. That's what we all should understand, that we should not go back into the egg and a chicken situation, right? Here is like, okay, capture everything. If you don't know what to do with the data, capture everything. That's a buzzword these days, like capture everything and we lose something sometime, right? Rather than that, the other valuable side, I see it as find the purpose, what you want to do, and then start collecting. Like just taking back it into a layman's language. You have the digital camera, How many clicks do you do a day? Do you know? How many times you go back and find the picture you took 3 years ago? I don't know. I won't even try,
It's
right?
hard to find.
So see, this is a challenge with the data. If you don't know what to do with the data, don't collect it, okay? Or collect it in a meaningful way that you know what to do with it in future. Because if you have lots of data and you don't know what to do with it, you are doing some more complications, right? Either you are overloading the machines, either you are overloading the cloud storages, or you're doing something that the next generation or the next developer's team will be totally confused what to do with it, right? So I think the clear definition, I don't have a clear answer to this, whether you should collect all the data or some data, but if you ask me, my preference would be to start with a purpose. What are you trying to achieve? Because not everything I want to do what Chad's doing, because probably my business model is different than Chad's model.
I moderately disagree, but again, I'm probably wrong. But the way that I look at it is, I want to, within the value proposition of the collection of data, like obviously, I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars collecting data that currently is irrelevant, right? But one of the reasons I like PoE so much is because everything that I power and plug into is now a sensor on that network. So it's power, it's data, but it's also a sensor network. So it's kind of a 3-for-1, right? When I plug that in as an infrastructure base. But whatever data I can collect from anything, anywhere, it's following standards of procedures to make sure that that data is as clean as possible, annotated as much as possible, because I don't know in the future if I'm going to be using that for further capture. But trying to capture as much as I can, because and making sure that the status of how you treat that data to store that data, so that in the future you can go back to it and go, oh, actually we're pulling from this data and we're realizing X is a value and Y is a problem, and like that's how I think you scope out later. But I also agree with you that you don't want to set your whole system up and go, so we're going to spend $10,000 to collect all this data that we think in some point in the future will have some use, but we just don't know what it is, because that's what a lot of tech does now. So I totally agree with you on that side.
Like from a practicality perspective, I mean, even for us as our company, we have software that we develop. We integrate with many different third-party technologies, but part of our development process is identifying the key performance parameters we want to historize. But it's also related to practicality in terms of how do we actually visualize and present that information? And if we got everything, the system would be too slow to actually process and look. So we have to do that balance of what is important versus what the actual technology can handle, and how do you actually make it relevant in sort of a user interface that makes you able to make actionable decisions.
Yeah, like you don't want to overload the system trying to figure out stuff, but I'm also saying that in the past 5 years, as an example, the number of times that I have thought that the value is here, and then I find it way over here thanks to our system is enough for me to go, okay, I'm never going to pretend that it's here until I see what comes out and what jams out. And once you've done that initial blush, like for Agriplay as an example, when we're growing, we realize that the gap in knowledge is on that agricultural crop data side of the equation. What is the crop profile? What's the light recipe? What's the nutrient recipe? What is that, so that in the future someone can make a business case about, I want to grow X, and this is how you grow it, and it's worth Y, right? I can't do that unless I've collected everything and realized that's where the opportunity was. And it took a while on collecting data on how things grew to realize that that's what we needed to collect. But I'm also not going to say that that's the only thing that we're collecting,
Right.
as long as it doesn't come at an expense in the system. Like, we're a little different in this one because we're not real time.
Yep.
Because plants only grow so fast, so we don't need to have every second, every day. So we're not really loading our cloud-based systems too heavily. Yeah, our data lake.
Guys, we're going to wrap it up here real quickly, but the reason why I brought all of us together here is because we all provide solutions. Triton Communications' mantra is we are the solution. We want to be out every day providing a solution to our clients. And when I look at what you guys are providing as solutions, and it's fantastic to be part of that. As a geek at heart, I look at it, I'm like, man, this is fantastic. I want to drive the remote control cars and be part of this wireless world that Indy's in, right? And do all this cool stuff that he's doing right now. I come from a bit of a farming background, being a Saskatchewan kid, and I'm thinking like, man, Dan, you're about to turn agriculture on its head with the cool tech that you're bringing inside, and it's so enlightening and really exciting to be part of stuff like that. And of course, Bav, being part of the oil and gas industry is not an easy thing these days, but Imperial does it with class. They're part of a solution they're bringing to market that is, they're mindful of carbon capture, they're mindful of being green, and all these solutions I think are where our future are. And I love the collaboration we had here today, and I hope that you guys can continue this collaboration into the future, and we continue to grow.
It's nice to hang out with the right side of the tech industry. So.
Thanks for inviting, but Chad, I'll end this with a meaningful, I use meaningful word a lot, because I agree with, I might have not used the right expression to say not to collect all the data, but we should have some kind of standardization or define a triangle. To me, I define a triangle with what data is functional, what is reliable, and what is cost effective, right? You have to play between the triangle, because one day you don't want to go extreme on any of the end, right?
Yep.
And realize later that you've spent so much and now that fancy technology is of no use to me just because of the cost overrun. Or
yeah, if the cost triangle doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense, and I don't know why so many people keep trying to make it make sense. So yeah.
Hey, thanks again for joining myself and our panelists today on TSI Today. And thank you to the audience for tuning in. If you would like to connect with any of these fellows, you can read it on the thumbnails on the bottom here. Their LinkedIn profiles, emails, and phone numbers that you might be able to get a hold of them on. Thanks again. We'll talk soon.